Hey guys, welcome back to Frances Quilts. Well, today I want to share with you two of the tools that I love in my quilting process. But first I need to tell you a story about these blocks that are right here. You see, when I go on my guild quilt retreats, I want something that I don't have to think about. I want to be able to talk and listen to music and do whatever I want to do during that time, but I don't really want to have to think a whole lot about my sewing. So 2 years ago at my retreat, I had been given some orange and some green fabrics, and I decided I'm going to just make a very simple charity quilt out of these fabrics. And when I left, I had the 6 blocks done that you see here. So it had been put in a box on a shelf, and I decided January is a good time to finish projects, so I pull that out to start getting it sewn together and finish it up. But when I pulled it out, I was confused because not only were there these blocks, but there were also a whole bunch of half square triangles. Some of them had been trimmed to 3.5 inches, some of them had not. And I'm thinking, these triangles this size doesn't fit in this quilt. So what was I thinking? I could not remember what I was thinking, but I thought, okay, let's just trim these half square triangles down now and just get them all the same size, and then I'll figure out what I'm supposed to do with them. Now, let's be honest here. I hate trimming down half square triangles. To me, it's just a time-consuming task, and I have never enjoyed it. But now I have 2 tools that I use, and it makes the process so much easier. Let me show you what they are. So here's one of my half square triangles that needs to be trimmed down to 3.5 inches. And I'm going to be using 2 of my favorite tools. And I've talked about these before, but I want to show you again because I think they are such wonderful, wonderful tools. The first thing I want to talk about is the Bloc-Loc ruler. These come in several different sizes. This is one of the smaller ones, and it's working perfectly for my 3.5 inch squares. Now let me tell you about it. The thing that's different about it is that it has a groove that runs right here. You can see one side of that groove runs from this point to this point, and the other one is 1/4 inch the other way. What that does is that gives you a place that you can butt up the ruler against the seam that you've sewn, and that makes it nice and steady and makes it very easy for you to use. Now, if you press your seams open, this ruler is not going to be as good for you. This is for seams where you have pressed them to one side or the other. Now, along with that, I like to use my Cutterpillar swivel mat. I love this mat because of one thing. It swivels easily, as you can see. But when I get ready to cut, it won't keep swiveling. When I get ready to cut and I press down, it steadies itself, and so now it's not going to turn around and move back and forth and back and forth. It's going to stay steady, and that makes this, I think, the best mat that there is out there. All right, let's take this ruler and let's trim down this square. The first thing I'm going to show you is that the seam allowance is pushed that direction, so we know there's a little ridge right there. So if I take my Bloc-Loc ruler, and some people have trouble with this first step, but this is the biggest and most important step. You want your first cut, you want to have it on that edge that runs from seam to seam, that runs all the way across from point to point. And we're going to push that on there like that. You see, it's not going anywhere. You're not going to be moving it around. I also want to make sure that 3.5 inches is where I'm going to be cutting. I want to make sure that there's plenty of room on the other side to trim it. So now that I have it steady against that block, I'm going to push down, and you see my mat's not turning anymore. I'm going to do this and this. Now, without moving that ruler, I'm going to turn my table around like this. Then again, without moving the ruler, I'm just going to slide the ruler down like that, keeping it butted up against that edge or that seam allowance. Now I line up my 3.5 inches here. I make sure that it's butted up there, and I trim. And I have my square trimmed to 3.5 inches. If you can hear the beeping in the background, I apologize. I'm having new windows put on my house, and they are, of course, being delivered in the middle of this video. So let's do one more just so you can see it again. I'm going to start with the edge that runs from corner to corner. I'm going to butt that up against my seam. I'm going to trim 2 sides. I'm going to turn this, slide this down, leaving it butted up against against that center seam. Line up my 3.5 inch along here and here, and trim again. For me, That is the easiest and fastest way to do these half square triangles. And I hope you'll try it, and I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I do. So that was a pretty easy way to get those half square triangles finished up. And you know what? As I was trimming down one of the last ones, I remembered what those were for. They actually don't belong in this project, but they were the offcuts from when I was doing this flying geese block right here. So now I have all of these squares ready to go. I'm thinking maybe I can add a little border to this or something and use those other squares that I already have squared up. I don't want to put them in a box and forget about them. I want to use them here. So keep watching here for more about this quilt, or check out my blog at francesquilts.com/blog. I write every single day about something creative or quilting or just something that's on my mind, and I'd love to have you join me there. Well guys, thank you so much for joining me today, and as always, I look forward to seeing you next time on Frances Quilts. Remember, if you like what you've seen, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please check out my website and daily blog at francesquilts.com, and I can be found on Facebook and Instagram at Frances Quilts. Thanks so much for joining me. Hope to see you again soon.